All right, so hello guys and gals. I'm not too sure if I'm seeing all kinds of stuff on the screen. I think I'm live now. So yeah, welcome to day 2 of Fast Forward to Now. Um, this is a process that I like to offer my clients where we can actually go through our perceptions and go through what we believe we were, we will be, and we are, so that we can reboot on purpose. So, the first step to coming back to now allows us to sort of like regroup, right? It's like whatever we left behind or whatever we threw forward, but we never got to. How do we get back to the center? And this is like the objective of session 2 is to sort of like reframe yesterday and tomorrow. There's part of us we live through some suffering, some where we didn't have the most enlightening behaviors, some where we were surviving, some where we were challenged. And there's all kinds of narratives that sort of like were created within ourselves and within our minds and within our environments that sort of lives through us and carries throughout our life. The thing is, we evolve. So as we evolve, part of us still want to be this way and still want to be that way. And part of us maybe don't want this and don't want that either. So clarifying on where you want to stand about your path and how you want to clarify that narrative and reframe your yesterday so they can build you up for today is really, really key. And doing the same for tomorrow, like the reason I say we need to also reframe tomorrow is that as we go along, we have a bunch of hopes and dreams. I mean, most of us, and I'm sure you have too, at one point or another throughout our school years, were invited to write down how do you want to be when you're going to grow up, or what's going to be your life when you're going to be 20 years old. Or for me, it was like, what's going to look your life when it's going to be 2000, the year 2000 and then 2020, right? So we have these key points where we imagine our lives, but yet our paths sort of like derived, and some things we've gained and other things we have not. So dissociating from the deception or the disappointments or the hopes that didn't come true or came true completely differently as we would have expected is also part of the journey of reframing it so that it makes sense to the narrative of today. If as a 10-year-old you always hope to be a doctor and today you're doing something else, well then some part of you is still hoping for that doctor even though you know that's no longer a possibility. So how do you make that true for you today? And doing that becomes something really, really interesting. Um, so for those of you who are visual, I would suggest you take a pen and paper so that you can write down at least the key words, both for how you perceived yourself when we start this exercise and what comes out of it. How do you want to perceive yourself in the future, right? So we'll start with the past, go back into the future, and then come back to now. So this is going to be an interesting 15 to 20 minutes. Those of you who are coming in a little bit later, I know there's a few of you coming in. I can't really see. I really need, I'm going to need help to figure out how to see all of you guys and talk to you guys so that I can help you out on the way. So the first part is going in the past, right? So, and there's going to be 3 parts that I want you to be listening to. There is your mind that's going to be sort of like shouting out the narrative that you've always heard or you already created or is recreating constantly. And then there's the heart that's going to have a bunch of emotions in there, sometimes good, sometimes bad. The idea is not to judge, it's not to be overwhelmed by them, it's just to stand back and observe, that's interesting, and I have this there and I have that there. And then you have the body. See how your body reacts to the narrative. Is it a narrative that's like completely assumed and welcomed and welcoming? Or is it one that makes you cringe or makes you want to like come back to yourself or want to hide or want to crawl under a table? The ones that make you crawl and make you like contract are the ones you want to be paying attention to because those are the ones that are not allowing you to be fully present today, and they're probably the ones that are some way holding you back from actually looking into the future and actually opening up to the hopes and dreams that could be, because there's something there that's holding you back or keeping you small, right? So the first part, going into the past. And again, we're not here to reminisce, we're not here to judge, we're not here to figure out, okay, where did I go wrong? That's not at all the objective of today. It's just to look at it and see what were the main steps in my life. Like, what happened? You came out of school. What were the key events that created who you are today? And see what kind of narrative comes out of it, right? So, how did you finish high school? How do you view yourself when you finished? And sometimes it may be younger than that, right? It may be middle school or just primary school. So, see what's the narrative of you as a student? How did you view yourself? And who in that moment were you? See? Already I can hear a bunch of narratives going around, right? The mind starts to talk, but just listen to it. Take a few of the key phrases it pops out, and then go into your heart and see, like, who was I back then, right? Or who was I trying to be? That's even more interesting. What was there that wanted to shed out, wanted to come out, but for some reason there was something else drawing me backwards? And when you take stock of that, also ask yourself, so who was I back then? That maybe for some reason or another, I'm no longer today, or I no longer allow myself to be today. Right? For me, it was the writer. When I was a young child, I used to write a lot, and I actually had, in most of my classes, the teachers actually encouraged me to write. And when I did one of these exercises, and that's why I'm offering it to you today, right? When I did that exercise, I realized I no longer was writing, I was no longer creating, I was no longer storytelling. And so there's a part of me that was like, wait a minute, I like to do that. So somehow along the way, there was a belief in me that was, well, doing that was not worth my time, or was not worthwhile, or was not what an adult was supposed to do. So I pushed it aside. But there's a part of me in that young child that wanted to be, that wanted to create, and it's that part that's eternal in me, right? So when you go into the past and you look at those situations, so who were you in that moment that you know you have always been and you will always be? And then you can take another moment in your life, maybe a little bit further out, maybe one of your first jobs, or one of your first traveling experiments or adventures, your first relationships, your first creative moments, right? As a being who has a voice, has a majority. So look into your personal life, look into your business life, look into your community life, because sometimes that's where a lot of things that we used to be need to be reframed. And ask yourself, what part of me was there but is no longer here? What part of me in the past I was ashamed of, or I wasn't proud of, or I thought wasn't good enough? And because of that, I let my today be less than it could be. Bridging the gap between the two allows me to come back to today, right? So write down the event, write down the narrative that comes up. What's the first thoughts, first emotion, and first body reaction, movement that comes out of it? And like I say, if it's cringing, if it's bringing yourself down, if it's sort of like contracting, then pay attention to that narrative and see how part of you in that moment of yesterday had something special, even though it didn't look like it. It had something special that maybe somehow you need to bring back into today. Sometimes it may require forgiveness, sometimes it may require a lot of compassion, empathy, acknowledgement, witnessing. It's not because you suffered that you need to bring the suffering back, right? When you suffered in those events, what you need to bring back is the gifts or the golden nuggets that's behind or below that suffering, that was being hidden by the suffering. That's the one you want to bring back. So, how do you let go of those attachments? What's part of you is still like stretched into yesterday and not living fully today? What part of you so wanted? I so loved when I was 10 and I did this, and I so loved when I was 15 and I did this, and I so loved when I was 25 and I was doing this. Well, take that love and bring it back to today. So, yeah, I loved it back then, and it made me who I was, and it made me really happy. So, how can I bring it back into today? And stand in that, right? Because when you start bringing those events back in and you start bringing parts of yourself back into today, so this is part of that's what I call part works or shadow work, right? It's when you go take those pieces and you bring them back to today. Who does it allow you to be now? Knowing that this is what you were, but it's also part of who you are. So doing that dance between the two of yesterday and today, so that eventually you sort of like bring back to yourself all those necessary parts. You can let go of whatever dust or bad or suffering or whatever you don't feel like bringing back right now, but just make sure you bring back who you need to be today and who you want to be today. The need is important, right? Because it needs to be filled. The why, the wanting is more important because it is your intention. It is who you want to be. And you have the right to name that. You have the right to define that and to choose that for yourself. And yes, you are worthy enough to choose it. And yes, you have everything that you can have where there's no limits, right? You can choose whoever you want to be in the now. So the next exercise will go into the future, right? So who did I think I was going to be? And now, again, you'll hear the mind going out of control, throwing a bunch of narratives, throwing a bunch of old dreams that, oh, I couldn't do that, and I couldn't do that. And, oh, that was such a wild dream. It would never have happened, right? But those parts of you are also in a future that never happened. So it's sort of like a wish where all of your intention, all of your energy was spent in that direction, but it's no longer being spent in this direction. So it's important to go back and get those dreams on board with you again. Maybe reframe them so that it makes more sense in the who you are today, so that you can bring about a tomorrow that makes sense, right? But how do you reach into those dreams and bring them back? So who did you think you were going to be? What kind of life did you think you were going to lead? What were your hopes and dreams? So again, for those the ones who are visual, write those words down. Those words are important because even though they may not make sense entirely as they stand in your now, they have a key. They are the key to opening up and looking into what kind of future would be fulfilling and satisfying for you, because those hopes and dreams were made by you. Yes, you evolved. Yes, you've gained knowledge. Yes, you've gained maturity. You've gained experiences. You've gained a lot of worth, a lot of worth. So those hopes and dreams are going to be different now. But at the core essence, there was something behind them that made you want it. So again, touch into those hopes and dreams and think and see what part of me that always existed and will always exist wanted that. What part of me I may have pushed aside to live the life I needed to live, but it's still sort of like attached somehow in the back of my mind. I say, one day I'll be doing this. One day I'd love to be doing that. Oh, if I could only get the chance to do it again, I would, right? So go and write those words down and figure out how you want to bring them back into today. Bring back those parts of you that are only dreaming into the actual moment of now so that you can take those dreams and let them evolve so that they can become actions. They can become part of you. They can become part of your life, of your environment, of your community, of this world. So that's where all the potential exists as well. And I'm going to throw a curveball at you because most of this is from you, right? So who you were and who you thought you would want to be that you bring back to today, and all your hopes and dreams that for some reason you let go or transformed or were pushed aside that you're bringing back into today. But the curveball I'm going to throw at you is that most of us, especially when we're very, very young, will capture any of the programs that surround us. So we will hear the adults around us telling us if this is okay and if this is not okay. And because we are being sort of like taught, right, how to live our lives, we take it in as a sponge. So look into those narratives, like, why did I become who I became? Was it because that's who I wanted to be? Or that's who I told I could only be? And why did I stop dreaming all of these dreams? Is it because I thought it was not possible or I chose something different? Or is it because the entire world around me told me that I was completely crazy dreaming all of these dreams and I needed to come back to earth and be mature and take a job and make sure my family had everything it needed, and I needed a house and I needed a car, and see how all of those words can be contracting. So what's the narrative? How did society view who you were and who you wanted to be? And how can you now choose to listen to the right programmings or the right narratives in society that's going to allow you to be and build who you want to become? So see how already your energy has changed, right? Because of being stretched out in yesterday and tomorrow, you're already becoming a lot more present. And the idea is not to sit with those old narratives and those old emotions and those old contractions that are in the body. The idea is to know they were there, but they no longer are needed. That you are whole, bigger than the past and the future. Because your now is eternal. I mean, the only minute we actually live is the minute of now. The only time we are actually present in our life is in this very moment. The rest is a memory or a hope. It's a fabrication. And so the only eternal place you exist is in the now. So let that sink in, right? Who do you want to be in the now? Because as you choose who you want to be in the now, you are also choosing who you want to be for eternity. And who you have always been and always will be, because the only time you really exist is in the now. The rest is a memory or a fabrication of tomorrow. So who do you want to be, right? The word being has another sensation than saying, oh, I want this and I want that, right? Doing and having are very, very different than being. Even the words are different, right? I could have success, but I want to be successful. I want to have happiness, but I need to be satisfied. So translating those words in what we often think of having and doing into a sense of being is different. How do you sit with yourself? What's there when you sit with yourself? What's there when you sit with others? And see how all of a sudden you can let a lot of all of those things go, right? Yesterday we talked about the I am. It wasn't I was and I will be, right? But I was, it's in the past. It no longer belongs to me, so I let it go. I will be is hope, right? So again, it's not who I am, it's who I might potentially be. So I let that go. And I come back to me and to the I am of today. And in the here and now, how do I look to my past now with this new narrative that's going to build my future? If you look at the past and say, oh, I've always been suffering, it's a misery, and well, it's hard to say, well, today I am a good person and I'm in the right place and I'm building right. But if you look at the past and you say, well, I was offered opportunities to grow in which I took the advantage to grow. And I've learned through the process. Sometimes I needed to protect myself, but sometimes I've also allowed myself to breathe and expand. And in those moments, I became who I am today. And you can look into the future and say, well, none of my dreams ever came true. Or you can look into the future and say, it was really cool to have all those dreams because it allowed me to step out of my comfort zone. And when opportunities presented itself to me, I decided to take them. And although it took me off path, it also took me onto a new path I could never have imagined. And it makes me who I am today. So as you sit here today, who are you? Who are you? And what has always been there within you? Who have you always been? Who have you always been? And just so we can talk a little bit to the narrative in your mind, we'll actually explore the next question, which is, who were you afraid to be? Or who were you ashamed to be? Because once you know who you have always been, you also know who you could never be ashamed of being or never afraid of being. And once you know who you have always been, then you know who you will always be. Because that part of you, that heart of you, that mind in you that's very powerful, that makes that makes you you, that makes you want to come alive, that makes you want to live, well, that part's not going away tomorrow. It's part of you. It's intrinsically connected to your essence and to your vibration. So who have you always been and always will be? Allow yourself to sit in that and dream in that. Feel it in your body, right? What comes alive in your body when you say this? Have always been, and I have always been. Because I am. This is who I am now, and this is who I am for eternity. Listen what emotions is coming up, right? What kind of beautiful, magical, golden words are appearing to define who you have always been and will always be, because that is who you are. And once these emotions, oh, those beautiful words are written down and are integrated into your heart, you can feel them beating differently, right? Then go to the mind and let the mind say and answer the question, who have I always been, that I will always be, because that is who I am. Yeah. Breathe it in. Yeah. Breathe it in. Let every cell in your body decide to vibrate on that one vibration. Yeah, what's disease, right? Disease is when we have unbalanced thoughts, unbalanced emotions, unbalanced movement. That's when the contraction happens. And when the contraction happens, disease will build in different kinds of forms. Sometimes emotional, sometimes physical, sometimes energetic. But if you decide on the one vibration that is who you are, and you breathe it in and you close your eyes and you push it to every single cell in your body, then every cell in your body is working in that same direction to make that happen. Because that's who you are. And this is how you can create a very clear message to yourself as to where you stand in the now. Even if you have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring, and even if you've lived all kinds of adventures in the past, good and bad, the intention of being who you are today, breathing into it and letting it vibrate into every single cell of your body will make you fast forward to now. So enjoy that feeling. Take as many deep breaths as you need to let it settle down in the mind, in the heart, and in the body. And just sit with it. Because that's how you are. So thank you. Thank you for being here with me today. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for session number 3.